Hey everybody! I just got done seeing the new Star Wars, and I was so I'm so distraught by it. I'm so put off by it, by everything in it. It felt like a real betrayal. In fact, I've decided to start a movement, and I'll go into this in more detail later. I'm determined that this movement is going to be huge and is going to be a legit rebel force called the Colosseo Vacantist. So it'll be kind of modeled after that Catholic sect of people who reject the last several popes. So that's what we're going to do. We reject this Star Wars as a legitimate successor in the Star Wars series. Too many things were violated, too many norms. I mean, part of those of us who've come to love Star Wars, part of what we've come to love is the structure that we've learned to understand about how things work. I mean, growing up as a kid, once VCRs came out, I can't tell you how many times I watched Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But like certain rules about, like, for instance, hyperspace, you didn't run into things in hyperspace, but once you came out of it, you did. Certain rules about how Jedis operated. They needed so much training. It had to be young. Luke was kind of an exception to that. It caused him problems, but training is very intensive. It takes all sorts of, learning, planning, all sorts of little things about like rules and structure and how things, they were just completely, absolutely violated. The Star Wars story is kind of an epic tale. It's this classically epic tale. Star Wars Jedis and that whole order it's very similar to the Bronze Age, heroic age, kind of Achilles age of heroes. That some anthropologists and people like Jung have argued are kind of part of our collective understanding. It's a story that we yearn for and that cultures will sort of naturally create. The story of a young person, a young man of aristocratic birth, but very oftentimes sort of a lost aristocratic birth. He, was sent to live with distant relatives or something like that, and but came to kind of reclaim his place and was an amazing warrior. Achilles. Many of the origin stories, like of the Hebrews, of the Romans, their kind of originators were, people of sort of a lost aristocracy who came back to reclaim it. Very similar to, like Luke Skywalker. I've heard a professor of Greek history describe the warrior aristocratic elite at that time as having neat stuff. They had amazing chariots, they had amazing blankets and stuff like that. And very similar to the Jedis, they had, lightsabers, they had these sort of special tools that were for them. They were in this sort of heroic, epic battle where the hero sort of goes out to face this, huge force. Yeah, but I mean, Star Wars, and we've made some allowances for Star Wars. For instance, like in humor, the kind of good old boy, don't get too cocky, kid, Han Solo comment to Luke Skywalker's. We sort of accepted that as a little bit of kind of slapstick humor. But yeah, I mean, this kind of internet humor that was introduced here, where like internet meme humor, I would call it, where, the Emperor was caught off guard. Because he was like on hold after this speech about how he was going to just crush them. Oh, I'm on hold. Oh, like just that kind of humor is unacceptable. That makes them into comic characters. I mean, we expect the enemies to be, these kind of majestic people as well. These Darth Vaders, these, the original Emperor. These guys, we expect even some of the Siths in that kind of second series during the 90s. I mean, they were majestic. We sort of expect that making characters into comic people for the sake of it makes them. You're out of the epic then. I mean, that's not allowed. No, you can't do that. And I mean, Luke Skywalker deserved a hero's death. I mean, he needed one. Turning to the dark side for some reason, crafting a story that would have explained that, we would have accepted that. But having him die this just pathetic death, that's not, no, like that's not allowed. Luke Skywalker is not allowed to die like that. I reject this. I reject this movie. And I'm determined someday to raise a movement who will give Luke Skywalker the hero's death he deserves. That was, completely unacceptable. So many, just like weaponizing hyperspace. That sounds trivial, but it was the turning point in the movie, and leaves all sorts of things open for like wondering. the whole thing, like inside the spaceship's outer space. In the past movies, there were sometimes kind of clumsy instances where you would have wondered, like, okay, if it broke down the middle, like, wouldn't that have instantly froze everybody inside? But no, somehow, chambers. In this, it was just like the doors were open to outer space, and everybody was just, Princess Leia floating through outer space, and then this like hyper female warrior nobility. Like, no, that's I mean, the Princess Leia type and the occasional female warrior hero that would be worked into that narrative was fine, but no, this is a male. This is and it was like totally. They even went into like union activity, like, oh, they got some person on the street who's like one of these kind of union activists for the people. Ugh. Star Wars is not a tale of democracy and equality, guys. It's an heroic tale. That's what we want. This was just mangled. It was just terrible. Like, not so. Yes, there's so much more wrong with it. So I'm going to go to a more detailed thing of like what was wrong with Star Wars, with this latest Star Wars in so many ways, and I reject it. This is the Colosseo Vacantist movement, and we reject the Star Wars, and we are gonna see these heretics like thrown off from whoever's licensed to write Star Wars movies, and somehow we're gonna return to like the true faith. Okay, thank you.